So, the reset approach. Earlier, I mentioned that reset is biomimetic, that concept is deep in our philosophy and intent of the standard. And even at risk of repeating myself a bit, I'm going to go back to that for a moment because it's such a fundamental part of the standard. So, the biosphere is a fantastic teacher. In fact, it's the world's best designer. And for those of you familiar with the work of Janine Benyus, who's co-founder of the Biomimicry Institute, this idea that when you want to solve complex problems, you look to nature first is known territory for you. And if we look at this illustration, what it's trying to show is that life on Earth started 3.8 billion years ago. And if we compress that to just 1 year, so we can wrap our heads around exactly how long that timeline really is, it means that humans appeared 18 minutes ago and written history a short 7 seconds ago. So clearly, humans as designers pale in comparison to the vast timeline of what the biosphere has been doing for billions of years. And it's a gross understatement to say that the biosphere has been designing for a long time, but it's not an understatement that we as humans have a lot to learn from it. And this is a key concept that the biosphere is teaching us, and it's one that has been embraced by Reset, and we've adopted that into the standard, and that's innovation through feedback. Reset is using this idea that the biosphere has shown us, which is building on incremental successes and building on positive feedback. So what do I really mean by that? Well, to explain, I'm going to go back to our single-celled organism that I was showcasing earlier in the modules and explain, what's happening is that life is innovating and evolving in every direction and at all times. But it's also discarding ideas and innovations that fail. And in fact, many and most of those innovations die. They don't receive feedback, so they go back to the drawing board, as it were. But once an innovation does receive positive feedback, it takes off and innovates in that direction. And so this is really just another way of saying that we too, as humans, we too are part of the biosphere. We are wired for that kind of feedback as well. It defines us. We thrive on it. It's why we're so addicted to things like our phones. They're giving us feedback. And yet, ironically, we spend over 90% of our lives in buildings. We've essentially become the first indoor species. And in doing that, we have put ourselves in spaces that are completely unresponsive. We've cut ourselves off from feedback. And as a result, we are feedback deprived. And being devoid of this type of interaction, which is really fundamental to the part of us, that human side of us and our human nature, well, I guess it's no wonder then that we find ourselves in an incredibly frustrating situation in unhealthy positions that contradict how we are really meant to function. So Reset's attempt is to create an approach that gives opportunity to correct and transform the industry by enabling buildings to communicate. So this opens up the idea for us to act, to react, and respond, and intentionally create proactive feedback loops. And so really this is leading to the potential to be able to answer this question: when will healthy buildings become mainstream? And I'm going to give a bit of a anecdote here. We believe it's when buildings can communicate with us. So just imagine, if you will, the scenario: Tom, it's 6 times healthier inside right now. Thanks, I'm on my way. And the building is speaking to you in these terms. And it's merely just one example. And I in no way mean to belittle the importance of it by making light of it. This is just one example of how we can actually take this information to empower us. This is illustrating, of course, the healthfulness and that protection factor of being inside when outdoors is proving to be polluted or more dangerous for you. So this is really taking something that's been in the past a little bit boring, building data, and turning it into something phenomenally helpful and really innovative. So, this ability and drive to intentionally design active homes and smart buildings is really exciting because we're now combining this idea of building data and social data and merging it to give rise to instant feedback. So Reset's approach is really about garnering ways to improve the built environment as a whole by building on integration of all the intelligence and technology that we have at our fingertips, and to facilitate the proper use of that for the proper use of resources and to become more proactive in helping to repair our ecology via human health. And now, how do we do that? How do we arrive at this scenario where I'm empowered by the feedback loop I'm getting from my building? Well, first we need to educate ourselves on what key parameters of concern are, and those are going to be contextual. Just like the biosphere is constantly changing, these parameters are constantly going to be changing. We need to educate ourselves on what those are. Secondly, we have to be able to collect that information of those parameters, on those parameters, in credible ways. And by that, I mean credible devices. And lastly, we absolutely must be able to read and report the data in responsible ways. So that's understanding and metrics on reporting. And these themes are going to be covered in the next set of modules coming up.